Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Sheliza, talk to me about how does one get into the fantastic world of equity, inclusion, and culture work? How did you get in there?
Thank you so much for that question. I think today a lot of people are in the EDI or DEI space. For me, I've been doing this work from a very young age within my community. The ethics of my faith of volunteerism and giving back to my community were really paramount. So I had been doing a lot of work that maybe not was called equity, inclusion, and diversity, but was giving back. And there is a pivotal moment actually when I was in high school. I went to a fine arts high school in Langley, British Columbia, in a very small town. It's actually called Fort Langley. And there was this case that came up. There was this girl named Rena Virk, a South Asian girl, same age as me, 14 at the time, who was murdered by her classmates in Duncan, BC. And this is a huge national, international case, so you may have heard of it. And basically, she was bullied by these white friends of hers. And then they kind of took her back as a friend. And then one night they all got together, they went for a walk and they beat her to death. And the details were so brutal. And we went back to our class and we were talking about these incidents because we were all that age. And we talked about how this bullying was so harmful and it was literally, it took her life. And we didn't have the language there for racism or equity, diversity, and inclusion. We had the language for bullying. And so in my theater class, I went to this fine arts school. We actually created a play called Bully for You that had these messages of bullying and discrimination within them. And so that's kind of when I really started getting into what we then called social justice work and bullying work. Fast forward through my studies in theater and in education, I continued to do this work. And I started to work through Theater of the Oppressed pedagogy, which really talks about understanding oppression, through Paulo Freire's work of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and really understanding critical consciousness. And I started using theater to embody empathy and understanding around principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then it wasn't until I was teaching teachers that I started to use this language of removing power. And then fast forward to doing my master's at Harvard, and I was on sabbatical from my teaching job. I started to notice that there was these issues of inequity across different departments, not only in education. And so as a result, I said, let me just pilot this. And that's when I started Curated Leadership about 8 years ago, really doing workshops and training and strategy under these big umbrella words of equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging.
So what problem would you say you solve now with those workshops and with curated leadership? Like what challenge do you solve? What problem do you solve? With what outcome?
Right. So really important to say is from a basic level, I make sure that employees feel seen, heard, and valued. And that is really what people want. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be valued in their workplace. And these are little things that we take for granted sometimes. Because when employees are not feeling those things, they don't feel a sense of belonging, or they don't feel a sense of inclusion, or a buzzword today, psychological safety. When they don't feel psychologically safe, they leave organizations. So we're trying to solve the problem of retention, avoid discontent and complaints within organizations, and really save people the money of talent acquisition to really create spaces where they're hiring good folks and folks want to stay at their organization because they've created a space that's inclusive, that values them. The other problems that we're trying to solve are those of some of the issues that are happening in the past 2 to 5 years, where there's a lot of difficult conversations happening in organizations because inevitably, the conversations around Our belief systems come up. Gone are the days where we don't talk about politics and religion in work anymore. We bring our whole selves there. So we solve this problem of helping managers, directors, employees to have these courageous conversations around what is happening. How do we support employees? How do we create these spaces? How do we foster that psychological safety so people can show up as their full selves and have productive conversations, and then have a workforce that is getting along well and also working well together and effective, right? You don't want people going off sick, for example. You don't want people leaving. You don't want people discontent and giving you a poor inclusion index review, for example.
And so the outcome of this is a higher retention of your employees, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Lower, I was going to say acquisition costs, but you don't acquire talent. You lower recruitment
Fees. Yeah. The
fees
fee.
cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where kind of the business case come from in that case.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Interesting.
absolutely. So retaining talent, less costs, because recruiting costs usually are at least 25% of an employee's salary is recruitment cost. So if you're recruiting every year, you're spending a lot of money in your organization instead of creating a space that of belonging and inclusion where that employee wants to stay. So you've invested a lot in this talent and onboarding, in the recruitment fees. You want them to stay. The other business case is that really you want to be seen as an employer that is equitable, where people want to work. And that also helps you attract the clients, right? So solving a lot of those problems and really creating, again, a reduction of complaints, really positive culture is a really big outcome. Because when we don't know how to foster and have these courageous conversations and psychological safety, that discontent can ripple through your organization. The other ROI, which is really important, especially in Canada where we have the 50-30 challenge, is gender parity, getting more women in leadership roles, getting more women of color in leadership roles. Those are all good for business and good for community, good for our society to have more women in leadership roles. So all of these things come from the strategy, the workshops, and the coaching that we do for teams and organizations.
Who who do you target? Like, who's your ICP? Who do you try to get into the room with?
Yeah.
Who is it that you're helping essentially?
Yeah. So some organizations still have human resources or HR professionals parallel with DEI professionals. So oftentimes it will be the HR person, the person from people and culture, or someone from the DEI team that will reach out to me to really initiate that work with me. And that will say, hey, we're having this problem. We need an expert to come in and give us some sort of plan or training. For me, I usually don't do one-off kind of trainings because I don't think that works, but let's develop a plan together. So they come to me, they build trust through me. Usually it's medium-sized businesses, people who've already done a little bit of work, because I find that if an organization has never touched DEI work or anti-racism work, then it's going to be really difficult to tap into them, and they need a different focus and a different learning path. However, when folks come to me and say, we're having these problems, we're thinking about them, we really want the outcomes to be greater inclusion and belonging, then I know, okay, I've got the right people, and this is going to be effective. And we have to commit to, at least 1 year or 2 years or 3 years of unpacking and then rebuilding. And so a lot of the work that I do that's really successful is when I do equity audits. And so what that is when I look at the whole talent management life cycle, from hiring to exiting an employee, and think about, are there any barriers or biases that exist in an organization's process at that time? So that's something that's really effective, because then we go deep into the systems and we actually shift the policies, we shift the practices, we start to shift mindsets through the trainings. And so it's a very holistic approach to change. And that's what's been most effective.
I like that. How do you market curated leadership? How
Yeah.
do you get the attention of those people? How do you get them to be problem aware and
Mhm.
then solution aware with your services?
Yeah. So, speaking of marketing, so the first few years, so my business has 74% referral rate, which is really great. So I think I use that in the honeymoon period of the business as my kind of go-to. But now I try to use those referrals as part of the relationships that I offer, right? I don't offer cookie cutter solutions. I build those relationships. And so now what I've been doing is working with those organizations. They refer me out. They trust me, and we build a relationship to do that work. And what we are doing for marketing now is we have a referral program, which some of our clients, go on to. We now are using like a sales CRM, so like HubSpot, to really attract people. We have a newsletter that goes out. So we've really sort of built a community. So we have a newsletter that gives information for free, tip sheets for free. So I think we've really established ourselves as a leader, a trusted partner in the DEI and workplace culture space, so that people will refer us and will come to us in terms of that marketing. We also have a podcast where we have like thinkers sharing some of their work around DEI. So I think that's really important for marketing. And really, for me, the core of this work is relationship building. So I'm having phone calls with people, I'm getting to know them, getting to know their organization, and really understanding what they need. And so again, like I said, it's not cookie cutter, it's not a one-stop shop. It's not going to be, one framework and then I just leave you and go. But I want to build capacity in the organization. And so I take time to relationship build, to meet people. When, a referral comes in, I'll have long conversations. Some clients will meet me, we'll have one conversation, we're ready to sign on. I'll have other clients where we'll be talking for 6 months or 1 year, and then they sign on for 3 years and they commit to that work, because I make it really clear that yes, I want your business, but I don't want a one-off business. I want you to really be committed to this work. Let's co-create some outcomes and objectives, and then let's go forward and really do this work intentionally. Because as you've seen, I'm sure in today's society, the marketing can be, very vast, and, lots of money can be spent on Google Ads and SEO. But then when you get to meet that organization, it's just cookie cutter, and it's just, a run of the mill kind of company. Whereas we really invest in the relationship, and we really care about moving a workplace into that space of inclusion and belonging, where every employee feels seen, heard, and valued. Hope that answers that.
No, it does make sense. And I like how you base it on referral in the first place, right? Which is what most B2B coach and consultants start with. That means that the product is good. So you get business like this.
Yeah.
And then once you want to scale and take the business to the next level, this is when you add on top of that a Google Ads strategy or another acquisition channel, doubling down on the referral, the case studies, and the testimonials that you got. So that does make a lot of sense. How do you, and I think you've already alluded to it, but how do you move that conversation from, initial interest to a sales conversation to SOW, letter of engagement? When you want to work with them, you want to work with them for multiple years or like a long time. But how do you get them to go from, hey, we're exploring DEI to let's rock and roll, Sheliza, and let's work together for a long time?
So a lot of it is that business case. So I ask them a lot of questions and build that relationship. I ask them questions about where has their organization been? Where do they want to see their organization go? What are the gaps in between? What do they have in-house? What do they need our support for? And by really understanding their pain points, as you asked me earlier, I can actually give them solutions. And I can tell them, okay, these are your pain points. This is what I can solve for. And it's going to take time, because it's going to take mind shift change as well as policy and programming change. So I think it is really the name of our company, Curated. It is that unique approach, like a boutique approach, a curated approach that is specific to their organization, that I think really transforms them from initial call to letter of engagement. And really about the core values that we have as an organization. We're BIPOC women owned and run. So that's really valuable to folks. We provide excellent customer service. We're always there for them along the way. We also want to build capacity, as I was saying, so we create a working group. And so I tell folks, this is how we work. This is our approach and our method. And we want you alongside with us each step of the way. We're not just going to come in, tell you what you want to hear, and then leave. And so I think what helps us get from that initial stage to that letter of engagement is the sustainability piece. Like, we ensure that there is a method of sustainability. We provide them with a plan of action so they don't have to do this alone, and we guide them along the way. The other thing that may seem commonplace is, when I talk to my clients, I tell them that we're going to use a calling in approach. And what that really means is that we're not going to be labeling all these things that you're doing bad, quote unquote. We're looking for, where are the gaps? What can we support you in? Where do we need some shifting? So for example, some organizations, when we do kind of a little scan before we get to that closed one, I'll say on HubSpot, we actually look at, okay, like, is there a funnel or a pipeline issue here? Is the leadership really lacking in their understanding? Does the board need some training before we kind of do all of this work together? So we really look at it as a systems approach. We look at it as strategically, and we share all of this with our clients. We're very transparent and open, and we work with them. We work with their budget, we work with their timeline, and we're very real with them. And I think that, along with our reputation and our relationship building, really helps us close that deal and get to that next step. And I think it just also comes out in the values we have. I think we can't separate our values and how much we care about the work. And I think that really comes through authentically when we're talking to clients and helps us with that sales deal.
Tell me more about how you retain. You've mentioned that, what your interest is to work with companies for a long while, and not just some one-off workshops, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? How can B2B coaches and consultants learn from what you're doing to retain clients, work with them longer, keep on providing value, right? Obviously, but also being able on getting that recurring business coming through.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of work. I'm sure lots of small businesses will tell you retention is really difficult. So we have clients that are all varied. We have some that have a yearly conference, and for 5 years they've been calling us to their yearly conference. I see that as retention, even though it's a small engagement, because they like the work we do, they find us engaging. So every year we're invited to their annual conference. For me, that's a very strong relationship, because out of that I get a ton of work. So that's one example of how I retain. So the high quality work, reputation, and good feedback. In terms of the other clients, what we look at is, we know that a one-time workshop is not going to change any culture. So what we do is we create a strategy for an organization. Many organizations have organizational strategies or DEI strategies, excuse me, or people and culture strategies. We do that work for you. You don't have to get your team spending 6 months doing the strategy. We call it a learning path. So once we have those initial conversations with an organization and determine and diagnose the gaps, what they might need through conversations, we invest in that time. Then we put a proposal together of a learning path. Now, based on the budget, it might be 2 years, it might be 3 years, it might be 5 years. But we take that guesswork out for the organization. We create that learning path. We create that DEI strategy for you so that clients see the value in that. And they're like, great, we don't have to do this internally, right? We can use our internal capacity to execute, but we've got the strategy now from Curated Leadership. And so that's a lot of the way that we do it. And so, recently I was saying that I have a client, some of them close right away. Some of them take 6 months. So I have a client, we've been working together for maybe about 4 or 5 months. Budget was approved. They love the 3-year plan. And the next step is we're going to meet with their management committee to go over the 3-year plan. We're going to talk to them and find out, okay, what now, 5 months later, are your pain points? Do we want to start with X, or do we want to start with Y, or do we want to start with Z and shuffle it? So I've given them the strategy, and now we can kind of jigsaw where it goes. And so that works really well, again, because they've got that learning path there for them. So I always propose that. And then I always lean back and say, what does this feel like for you? Does this feel manageable? Because a lot of organizations say we can't do something monthly. We want to do something every 6 months. And I say, okay, so what are we doing in between? So we have micro learning for managers, for example, that we offer. And so I say, let's do some micro learning in between so that that learning is being retained within that long gap, for example. So we have tons of different ways to engage with people based on their organizational structure, based on the size of the organization, and based on their budget. And it seems to have been going really well for our organizations because they value that. They value the expertise we bring. They want to know what we think is best, and they trust us. And I think it all loops back to that first thing I was saying that we were talking about is as a B2B business, right? That we are really in the business of building trust and relationships. And that's something we do really well. So we are trusted to provide this path for them that they then sign on to, and we get retention that way.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Because you've been flying, Sheliza.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing that you find the most challenging right now in your business? What's the thing that once you crack that nut, you're gonna be able to take the business to the next level?
Yeah.
What would that be for you?
Oh, there's a few things right now. I think right now the challenge is the economy and what's happening in the South. So for me, I want to scale. I want to get to that next level so that I can have more impact. I can hire more staff, pay them better. That's what I really want. I want to expand. But the challenge right now is manyfold. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of different DEI facilitators and practitioners and firms out there. That's one that are offering cookie cutter things. The second thing is a lot of large organizations are doing things internally or have backed down on DEI efforts. That's also been hard. And the third thing is the economy. So I'm hoping that next quarter it gets a little bit better because folks are kind of tightening their budgets for this work. And unfortunately, some organizations that I would love to work with are not committing in the same way that they were committing. And so one of the ways that I have tackled that, as I've kind of been using this language of workplace culture, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is about culture. It's about people and culture. It doesn't matter what words you use. And so really, I've been talking to people about you want to improve your workplace culture, which is the same thing as DEI. So shifting that language. But that is one of the biggest thing is the economy and the budgets, and then the ripple effect of what's happening down south to break into larger markets for sure. And of course, like you said about the sales piece, my expertise isn't sales. So relying on my colleagues to support that and really grow that sales process is what we're kind of in this phase of doing right now.
So you have a happy thing coming up for the business. What's the next big opportunity for you once the big thing will have happened? I don't know if I can talk about this live, so that's why I'm like.
Yeah, I'm having my second baby next week actually. See, I'm like really big.
Happy days.
Big baby coming.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's a hard thing, right? As an entrepreneur, I don't get time off really, and I have to keep building.
Right.
What's next for me? I see a lot of great things on the horizon. We're doing a lot of speaking engagements. We're working with a lot of new clients. I think the next big thing for me is to really take it to that next level and expand again. So I'll probably take like 6 months of a down and then go back up and really commit to this work. So we do a lot of coaching and executive coaching, and that's really growing. So focusing on that leadership and mentoring aspect of the business will be huge in 2026, 2027. And then building out the team and the sales team even more. We've seen how fruitful the sales and marketing can be. And, we did a lot of work in the US during COVID, interestingly enough. And so I think going back to the US, using my connections and doing a lot more of that work will be key. We also had a client come to us and say, we're currently working with them. And they said, listen, we have an RFP for 3 years. We want you to apply for it. So that'll be really great. Some great projects on the way. And so birthing a new baby and hopefully, new business arms and chapters and a lot of growth.
That's all we can wish for you.
Thank you.
Sheliza Jamal, ladies and gentlemen. Sheliza, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, they can go to our website at curatedleadership.com, LinkedIn, Curated Leadership. It should also direct you there if you go shelizajamal.com. So we're on all the socials. You can check us out. You can check out our podcast, which is called Curated Conversations, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And yeah, connect. I would love to see a DM in my LinkedIn, Instagram, inbox, whatever it is, Sheliza at curatedleadership.com. I always reply. So feel free to drop me a line. Let me know how I can support you. Or if you are, early in your stages of DEI consulting and you want some advice, I'm happy to share with you.
We'll put all the links in the description. Sheliza, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.